The ship was silent except for the soft hum of machines. Jackson sat inside the control room of his cargo freighter. Watching the numbers on the fuel screen drop slowly, it didn't make sense. There was no fire, no alarms, no broken pipes, but somehow, every day, the fuel level kept falling. He scratched his head and sighed. This was not good. He was floating deep in space. Far from any help, the fuel was his only way back home. And if he didn't solve this soon, he would be stuck out here forever. Jackson got up and grabbed his flashlight. He had checked the fuel system yesterday and the day before. Still, he had to look again. Maybe he had missed something. He climbed down the metal stairs and opened the hatch to the lower level. Pipes ran along the walls, clean and dry. The tanks were sealed tight. No sign of damage. He even crawled under the ship's floor and checked the hidden valves. Nothing, not even a single drop of leaked fuel. How can this be? He whispered, his voice echoing in the empty space. Machines don't lie. And numbers don't just fall for no reason. He sat on the floor, tired. Maybe the computer was broken. Maybe he was losing his mind. That night, as Jackson lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, he heard something strange, a soft noise like sipping, like someone drinking through a straw. He sat up quickly, holding his breath. There it was again, slurp, slurp, then silence. His heart pounded. He grabbed his flashlight again and slowly walked toward the storage area. It was cold and dark. Filled with crates and spare parts, he moved, quietly, shining the light around corners. Then he saw something. A shadow moved fast between the crates. Jackson froze. He wasn't alone on the ship. He moved closer, slowly, step by step. Another sound, this time a soft hiss. Then, from behind a pile of crates, a long hose stretched out. At the end of it, something was drinking. Jackson held his breath and jumped forward, shining the light. Straight at it, what he saw made his blood run cold. It was a girl, an alien girl, small, with glowing blue eyes, long, dark hair, and skin that shimmered like oil. She looked no older than a teen, but her mouth was wrapped around the fuel line. Like she hadn't eaten in days. When the light hit her face, she blinked and hissed, baring small, sharp teeth. Jackson stepped back, stunned. The girl pulled the hose out of her mouth and stared at him, eyes wide. For a moment, no one moved, just silence, heavy and strange. Then she bolted. She was fast, crawling like an animal through a narrow gap between the crates and vanishing into the darkness. Jackson ran after her, calling out, "Wait! Stop!" But she was gone. He stood there, breathing hard, shocked. He wasn't dreaming. He had just seen a real alien girl on his ship, drinking fuel like it was water. He spent the next hour searching every corner, but found nothing. She had disappeared, like a ghost, back in the control room. Jackson locked the main doors and sat down. Now he knew where the fuel was going, but he had more questions than answers. Who was she? How did she get on board? Most of all, what kind of creature drinks pure Starship fuel and survives? He leaned back in his chair, staring at the empty hallway through the glass window. The soft hum of the ship filled the silence again. But Jackson's thoughts were loud. Something was very wrong. He could feel it in his bones. This was no normal leak. This was the beginning of something much bigger. And out there, in the dark corners of his own ship, a strange girl with glowing eyes was hiding, watching, waiting. Jackson didn't sleep that night. Every sound made him flinch. He kept imagining those glowing eyes in the shadows, watching him, waiting for the right moment to strike. But morning came and nothing happened. It's the same quiet hum of the ship and the slow ticking of the fuel gauge. Dropping again, he locked every door except the cockpit and sat with his stun gun on the table. His eyes were heavy, but he forced himself to stay alert. Whatever that thing was, it had been drinking fuel for days without getting caught. It knew how to hide, which meant it was smart. Jackson replayed the camera logs, searching for any clue. He sped through the hours quickly. Nothing unusual then. At 2:13 ship time, a crate in storage moved. By itself, he zoomed in, adjusted the lighting, and there just for a second, he saw her curled up between two containers, as still as a shadow. She had been sleeping right under his nose the whole time. Jackson grabbed his jacket and moved. Fast, he didn't want to hurt her, but he needed answers. And if she could drink fuel and live, she was not just a child or a stowaway. She was something else. He moved quietly, step by step. The storage area colder than before. He could feel it. She was here. He opened a crate slowly and saw food missing. Wrappers tossed aside, clothing pulled from storage and turned into a small nest. She had made a little home inside his ship. A soft, clinking sound echoed. Jackson turned fast, heart racing. There, behind two crates, he saw movement. He raised his flashlight but didn't switch it on. Instead, he crouched low and whispered, "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "I just want to talk." Silence, then a shuffle. And slowly, a small face peeked out. The alien girl was trembling, her eyes glowing faintly. She held a sharp piece of metal in one hand, like a knife. Her other hand clutched a piece of bread stolen from the supplies. Jackson sat down on the floor, lowering his voice. "You've been hiding for days," he said gently. "You're cold, scared, and hungry. I get it." Her eyes narrowed, and she hissed softly, but didn't run. Her lips moved, forming strange sound static, clicks mixed with broken English. "No, hurt, me," she said, voice rough like static. Jackson's heart sank. She wasn't just some creature, she was trying to talk. He nodded. "No hurt, I promise," he said. Slowly reaching into his pocket and pulling out a protein bar, he tossed it gently across the floor. She flinched, then sniffed it like an animal, and finally grabbed it. She chewed fast, like she hadn't eaten in days. Jackson didn't move. He just watched her, trying to understand. She was skinny. Her skin full of strange glowing lines, like soft circuits under the surface. Not human, but not beast either. Something in between. "You're drinking my fuel," he said. "Why?" The girl looked up, blinking slowly. "Life, Need," she said, pointing to her chest, then to the fuel pipe, inside, Burn. Jackson didn't understand at first, but then it hit him. Her body ran on fuel. Real, high-grade, toxic to-human ship fuel. It was her food, her energy, her life. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the ship. The girl gasped and crawled back into the shadows. Jackson stood and ran to the cockpit. A signal was flashing on the screen. Unidentified vessel approaching. Fast. No ID, no message. Just a blank radar blip closing in. He turned to look behind him. She was gone again, like smoke, but she had said enough. She was running from someone, and now they were catching up. Jackson looked at the radar, then at the fuel gauge. Barely enough to run, not enough to fight. And a strange alien girl hiding in his ship who drank fuel like water. He didn't know what mess he had stepped into, but he knew one thing for sure. Whatever this was, it was far from over. Jackson locked the cockpit door and stared at the blinking radar. The ship coming toward him wasn't broadcasting a name, a signal, or even a warning. That meant one thing: trouble, and trouble, he guessed, was exactly what the alien girl had been hiding from. He didn't see her, but he knew she was close. She always was. Like smoke behind a mirror, always vanishing before he could ask the real questions. Jackson powered up the ship's defense systems. They barely worked, held together with spare parts and hope, but it was all he had. Fuel was low, weapons were weak, and he had a silent stowaway who drank liquid fire for breakfast. A faint sound behind him made him turn. There she was, standing in the doorway. Her small hands gripping the frame. No fear in her eyes now. Only something deeper, something sad. Jackson spoke softly. "They're coming for you, aren't they?" She nodded slowly, her glowing eyes dimmer than before. "Bad people," she whispered. "Find ... me." "Take back." He wanted to ask more, but the ship shook violently. The enemy vessel had locked a tractor beam on them. He was being pulled in like a fish caught on a hook. Jackson rushed to the controls. Trying to break free, he rerouted what little power he had left. Nothing worked. Behind him, the girl stepped closer. Her body flickered like a light running out of power. She touched the wall gently. And something strange happened. The fuel lines glowed brighter. Systems flickered back to life. The ship groaned and then pushed forward, breaking out of the tractor beam. Jackson stared at her in disbelief. "You did that?" he said. "You're connected to the ship." The girl blinked slowly, her hands trembling fuel. "Speak to me," she said. "Ship ... Listen." He didn't understand it fully, but he believed her. Her body worked like a living generator she could talk to. Machines not with words, but with energy. Alarms rang again. The enemy ship was still following, and it was faster. Jackson gritted his teeth. He needed a plan, or they'd both be dead or worse. Taken, he turned to her. "What do they want?" "From you?" The girl sat on the floor, hugging her knees. "Me. Made for war," she said. "Born ... in lab ... Not child." Jackson felt a cold chill in his chest. She wasn't just some alien refugee. She was an experiment. A weapon, maybe the last of her kind. The enemy ship hailed them, finally sending a message. A flat voice came through the speakers. "Vessel 4798. You are holding stolen property. Prepare to be boarded." Jackson's jaw tightened. "She's not property," he snapped. "She's a person." The voice replied with a pause. "She is. Fuel hybrid biocode X23, classified as non-living equipment. Return her, and you will be allowed to go free." Jackson looked at her, sitting there silently on the cold floor. She had no family, no home, no place in the universe, except here. "With him, no deal," he said, and cut the signal. The girl looked up at him, surprised. "You stay," he said. "I protect." Tears formed in her glowing eyes. Small and quick like sparks, she crawled closer and placed her hand over his. For a second, warmth passed between them, not from the ship, but from her, real, strange, human warmth. Jackson turned back to the screen. The enemy ship was charging weapons. He had one shot, one small chance. He turned to her again. "Can you help the ship run faster?" She nodded slowly. "But hurt," she said. "Too much." "Maybe break." He hesitated. "I don't want to break you," he said. But she shook her head. "Better than cage." She stood, placed both hands on the wall and closed her eyes. The ship pulsed with light. Engines roared. And they shot forward like a comet, leaving the enemy far behind. But she collapsed the moment they jumped. Her body curled up, trembling. Her skin flickering like a dying light. Jackson caught her, held her tight. "Stay with me," he whispered. "I won't let them take you, I promise." But deep inside, he knew they would come again, stronger, and she might not survive the next run. The lights on the ship flickered as Jackson cradled the alien girl in his arms. Her breathing was slow, her skin dim, and her fingers twitched like sparks, fighting to stay lit. She had burned herself out just to save them, and now she was slipping away. Jackson carried her to the medbay and gently laid her on the padded bench. The machines didn't know how to read her vitals, but the lines on her skin were growing dimmer with every second. He wrapped her in a thermal blanket and whispered, "You're safe now." But even he didn't believe his own words. He stayed by her side, eyes never leaving her face. Her body wasn't bleeding, but something inside her was broken. He could feel it, and then he noticed beneath the lines of glowing circuits on her neck. There was something etched into her skin, a brand code, X-23 Royal. Jackson blinked. He had heard rumor stories of hybrid experiments created by powerful alien empires. But the word Royal wasn't something he expected to find on a fuel-eating girl hiding in his ship. Whoever had made her didn't just make a weapon. They made something more, something that could change everything. An alert broke the silence. Radar sensors detected another signal, a faint echo. Not close yet, but following, the hunters hadn't given up. They were tracking her. Jackson clenched his fists. He had to find a place to hide, or a way to fight, but he had no fuel left. His ship was running on what she gave him, and now she was unconscious. He turned to the control screen and began searching through star charts. There had to be a place nearby in Ware that could help. A hidden base, an asteroid field, an abandoned station. He found something strange, an unmarked dot floating between dead sectors, no name, no signal, just coordinates. Jackson stared at it. The girl had whispered something before she passed out, a strange word, Narthale. He typed it into the search system, nothing came up. But the nameless dot was located in the exact area she had looked toward before she collapsed. He set the ship's course. If it was a trap, he had nothing left to lose. As they moved through the empty dark, the ship grew colder. Without her energy, systems slowed down. Jackson stayed in the cockpit, one hand on the wheel, the other gripping the stun rifle. He didn't know what was waiting out there, but he had to try. Hours passed. Then something appeared, a shape in the distance, hidden behind a curtain of drifting ice and dust. A station, ancient and quiet, with strange lights glowing faintly. The ship drifted closer, and doors opened automatically. No guns, no warnings, just silence. He docked and carried her inside. The air was breathable, but cold and still. The walls were made of dark stone and strange wires. Symbols carved into every surface as he stepped into the main chamber. Lights began to turn on by themselves. Not electric lights, more like floating orbs of warmth. He laid her down on a stone table, unsure what to do next. Then, sound echoed through the hall like wind and voices. From the shadows, a figure emerged, not human, not machine. Old, tall, cloaked in silver and bone. Jackson raised his stun gun. The figure didn't move. Then it spoke not in words, but directly into his mind. "You bring her home," the voice said. "She carries the royal flame." Jackson stood frozen. The figure stepped closer, looking down at the girl. "She is the last of the line," it continued. "She was stolen, ... broken, ... made into a tool." Jackson asked, "Can you heal her?" The figure nodded slowly. "Yes, but there is a cost." "What cost?" Jackson asked. The figure didn't answer with words. Instead, it placed a hand over her heart, and her body began to glow again. She gasped, eyes opening wide. Her skin lit up with deep blue light, brighter than before. She sat up quickly, looking around in panic. When she saw Jackson, she grabbed his hand and held it tight. "Safe?" she asked, voice shaking. He nodded. "For now." The figure vanished into the shadows without another word. The station hummed with energy. Jackson looked at her and said, "They called you royalty." She looked down, whispering, "Was Queen's child ... before war." Before Cage, he sat beside her. The truth was coming out piece by piece. She wasn't just a runaway. She was a survivor of a fallen kingdom, hunted by those who feared what she could become. And now she was awake, restored, and more powerful than ever. The moment she stepped back onto the ship, it responded like a living thing. Lights glowed brighter. The engines gave a soft hum, and the air felt warmer somehow. Jackson had never seen anything like it. It was as if the ship itself recognized her, like it had missed her. She moved slowly, touching the walls with her fingers. The glowing lines on her skin pulsed in rhythm with the ship's lights. She was still weak, but not like before. Now she carried something stronger, something deeper. Jackson watched silently, still trying to understand who she really was. She was no longer just the strange girl who drank fuel in the shadows. She had a presence now, something regal, like a sleeping storm just starting to wake. "I remember," she whispered suddenly. Looking at him, pieces come back now. He stepped closer, careful not to scare her. "What do you remember?" he asked. She looked at the floor, then pointed to the stars outside the window. "Fire and sky, ... soldiers, ... screaming. Taken from mother, made to run engine. Then escape." Her voice was rough, broken, but her meaning was clear. She had once belonged to something powerful, maybe even sacred. Then she had been stolen and turned into a tool, a living machine. Jackson clenched his jaw. The ones who did this to her, they didn't just chase her, they destroyed her past. The ship's alert broke the silence again. The enemy vessel was back on the radar. And this time, they were closing in fast. Jackson checked the fuel levels barely enough to run. He looked at her. "I need to know," he said. "Can you power the ship again?" She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. "Can, but not long." "And I break more." He hated asking her, but they had no choice. "Then just enough to escape," he said. "We'll find safety after, I promise." She walked to the engine room, barefoot, silent. Jackson followed, heart heavy. She placed her hands on the reactor core, and her body began to glow once more. Blue light traveled through the cables, the floor, the walls. The ship roared to life, but her knees buckled, and Jackson caught her before she hit the floor. "You're doing great," he whispered. "Just hold on," the engine screamed as he pushed them to maximum thrust. The enemy vessel followed, launching drones that latched onto his hull like metal insects. The ship shook violently, warning lights flashing everywhere. He turned the ship toward a nearby asteroid field, dangerous, sharp, unpredictable. He flew into the rocks with blind trust. The drones scraped against jagged stone and burst into flames. One by one, they fell away. But then something worse happened. A massive shockwave hit the rear of the ship. One engine went dark. Jackson lost control. They began to spin, out of balance. Into the thicker part of the field, he pulled the emergency stabilizers. The ship groaned, then finally stopped. Damaged but not dead. He looked back at her. She was barely conscious, curled up near the reactor. He rushed over, knelt beside her. "You okay?" he asked, voice shaking. She blinked slowly. "Still here," she whispered, barely. He wanted to scream at the stars. She had done everything for him, for them manned. Now she was fading again. He carried her to the med bay and searched for anything that could help. Still nothing. She didn't bleed, didn't respond to medicine. She wasn't just aliens. She was something beyond what humans had studied. Then she touched his hand weakly. "There is one way," she whispered. "What is it?" He asked. "Need your heat, your spark." Inside, Jackson didn't understand at first. But then he saw it, her hand resting over his heart. She didn't mean spark like fire. She meant life, connection, warmth. "I don't know how," he said. She placed his hand on the lines on her chest. "Just feel." "Don't think." He closed his eyes, holding her hand, and focused only on her. Her breath, her pulse, her glow. And then something clicked. His warmth flowed into her like a river, not through wires or tubes, but through something older, deeper. Like ancient tech bonded with soul, her glow brightened slowly, her body no longer shaking. She sat up, breathing easier, eyes clearer. "You gave me anchor," she whispered. Jackson smiled slightly. "You gave me a purpose." The ship floated silently now, hidden among asteroids. For a few hours, they had peace. But both of them knew it wouldn't last. They would return, and next time. The enemy might bring more than ships. The stars above the asteroid field burned quietly, pretending nothing was wrong, but Jackson knew better. He stood at the edge of the viewing deck, staring into the darkness. They weren't safe, not really. Just hidden, for now. Behind him, the girl moved slowly, her body still glowing faintly. Her steps were small, but steady. She was stronger now, because she had rested. But because he had shared something with her, his heat, his spark, whatever that truly meant. Jackson turned around as she approached. "Can you feel them?" he asked. She nodded, eyes half closed. "They search," she whispered, "but they fear the old path." "The old path?" Jackson asked. She pointed to the stars again, moving her finger in a strange pattern. He followed the gesture and entered the coordinates into the navigation system. It was a forgotten route mapped, unstable, and hidden inside a dying nebula. He looked back at her. "You've been there?" She nodded. "Was home once, ... long ago." Before the war, the moment he confirmed the route, the ship shivered, not from damage, but as if it remembered. Like her, the ship seemed to carry memories buried deep inside. Jackson began rerouting. What power they had left to shield systems if they flew through a dying nebula? It could tear the ship apart. She moved beside him. Pressing her hand to the console, the lights shifted, the route became clearer. Like her presence was unlocking hidden data. "You're linked to this tech," he said. Her answer was soft, "Built from us." He stared at her for a long moment. Everything about her felt like a secret waiting to be spoken. She had been made in a lab, used like a tool. But somewhere deep inside her was royalty. Memory and power beyond anything he knew. They launched from the asteroid belt, engines whining, shield flickering. The hunters were close, but the nebula was closer as they entered its swirling colors. The ship began to creak. Lightning danced along the windows. And systems blinked in and out. Jackson held the controls tight. The engines screamed. Trying to push forward, suddenly something large appeared in the mist. A ship. But not like any they had seen before. It floated, silent and broken, its hull covered in golden symbols. It looked ancient, royal. Abandoned for centuries, the girl gasped softly. "Mother's ship," she whispered, her fingers trembling where she last stood. Jackson stared at the massive vessel. Now drifting dead inside the nebula, he connected a scan. No power, no life signs, just silence. But the girl stepped forward, eyes wide. She's still there. He didn't argue. They docked, and the airlock opened with a groan. Dust floated like ash, and the walls glowed with dying light. The halls were lined with carvings, symbols older than human language. She walked through them like she'd been here yesterday, and then they found her, a body, resting on a throne at the center of the ship, frozen in time, wearing armor fused with her skin. The girl fell to her knees. "Queen Luma," she whispered. "My mother." Jackson lowered his head in respect. This wasn't just an old warship. This was a tomb. A sacred place forgotten by time and erased by enemies. She stood slowly and touched the throne's core. A pulse of energy rushed through the room. The old ship responded, systems lighting up again for the first time in decades. The Queen's armor glowed faintly, and a small device dropped from her hand. The girl picked it up, an ancient royal crest. She placed it on her chest, and her glow turned gold. Jackson stepped back, stunned. She was no longer just a runaway. She had just become the rightful heir. The ship responded, instantly opening hidden doors. Activating forgotten codes, a map appeared in the air, showing hidden colonies' resistance. strongholds, and worst of all locations of enemy fleets hunting the last of the royal line. Jackson looked at her. "You have an army hidden out there?" She nodded. "Sleeping, ... waiting, ... Now they wake," he smiled, even though his hands still trembled. They had started with a leaky ship and a silent girl hiding in the dark. Now they had the last royal signal, a fleet buried in shadows, and a reason to fight back. But before they could return to his ship, a loud alarm echoed through the halls. The enemy had found them. She looked at him, no longer afraid. "Let them come," she said. "This time, we burn brighter." The ancient ship began to breathe again. Engines that had slept for decades now hummed with life. Blue lights turned gold, spreading across the walls like veins waking from a long dream. Jackson stood at the control center, staring at the holographic map pulsing in front of him. Enemy ships were closing in fast, too fast. He turned to the girl, the one he had once found drinking fuel in the shadows. Now she stood tall in the throne room, the royal crest glowing on her chest. There was fire in her eyes, not fear, and the ship answered her like a loyal beast remembering its queen. "They're coming," Jackson said. She nodded. "They will learn why we were feared." The enemy ships broke through the edge of the nebula. Sleek hunters, black and sharp, like blades in the dark. They didn't waste time. A voice came through the comms, cold and mechanical. "Return the royal unit and surrender your ship." Final warning, Jackson grinned. "She's not a unit anymore." The girl stepped forward and pressed her palm to the command crystal. Her glow spread through the throne, and the ship responded. Cannons rose from hidden chambers, armor plates locked into place. One word echoed through the ship, old and powerful: awaken. The royal vessel moved like a predator shaking off dust. Jackson had never flown a ship like this. He didn't need to. The girl was the pilot now, her thoughts flowing through metal and circuits. Every turn, every weapon, every choice, it came from her. The enemy opened fire, red beams cutting through the nebula. The royal ship dodged like a shadow, spinning and striking. A blast from the forward cannon tore through one of the hunters. Another followed seconds later. Jackson held onto the railing, stunned. This wasn't a fight, was a message. They had returned. The girl didn't smile, but her eyes shone brighter than ever. Her memories came back in flashes: battlefields, songs, the sound of her mother's voice. She was not just escaping anymore. She was reclaiming what was lost. The enemy tried to flee, but the ship wouldn't let them. Drones chased them down, disabling engines, forcing surrender. No kills, only warnings. She wanted the galaxy to see not fear, but power with purpose. Jackson stepped beside her. "You've changed," he said quietly. She looked at him. "You believed first," she replied. As silence returned, the royal signal pulsed through the stars, and then came the answer, all across the galaxy. Old beacons lit up one by one, ships buried in dust, hidden in caves. Lost in ice awoke, voices answered the call. The scattered loyalists, the old guard, the forgotten bloodlines, and they all said the same word. Queen. Jackson watched it all unfold through the map. He had been just a lost cargo pilot, floating, alone in space. Now he stood at the side of the galaxy's most dangerous girl. He still didn't know exactly what she was made of. Part fuel, part spark, part memory. But he knew this: she was alive. And she was free. Later, back on his old ship, Jackson walked the halls alone. The girl had stayed behind to guide her people. But before partying, she had looked at him and said, "I will return." He smiled, sitting in the old pilot's chair. Fuel lines now sealed tight. No leaks, no shadows. But sometimes, at night, he heard soft footsteps, like the echo of her past self. And sometimes, when the stars grew quiet, his ship lit up just a little like it remembered her too. The galaxy had changed, And it all began with a simple leak. A quiet thief in the dark, and one human who decided not to be afraid.